Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Finance Talk, where we speak about finance, business, and investing. I'm Eugene. I have more than 10 years of experience in business. I also interested in finance and building my own portfolio and hoping to set up a fund in the nearest future.
And I'm Nick Rational. I too have a lot of business experience and been doing the investing for a while now. Together, we're going to share with you what we have learned, and together we can all learn more and become greater investors. I too hope to start a fund in the near future, and let's all learn together.
So, what will be our today's topic, Nick?
All right. So today's topic is very similar to the previous episode. The previous episode, we discussed the different ways to look and try and figure out, is there a market crash or correction coming, and what indicators to look at. This episode, what I'd like to do is discuss indicators that might show a recession or depression. And I think that Eugene has got some good ones for us today. What's the first indicator of that?
Yeah. First of all, we need to say that we both are value investors and we do not rely on 100% on macroeconomic events. We rely heavily on the microeconomic with understanding of the business and all this management and the fundamentals of the business. But in order to understand the current trend and your situation in the market, even though you want to try to time it, one of the interesting indicator is the national debt, internal and external. Looking at this indicator can help you to understand the current economic situation in the country. When the government borrows money from the people inside the country or other countries, they usually receive some kind of rating and a certain percentage for the debt. And this money usually goes different infrastructural projects, to the medicine, to social security, and all similar stuff. If the percentage of the debt is way higher than the national GDP, the country has a potential problem, because if something goes not according to plan, for example, we all know that the market is the auction-driven thing, and if the total crowd will be depressed, this can negatively affect the whole country. As a result, the country can be decreased in the particular rating. The amount of money which the government can borrow from outside and the inside can significantly decrease, leading to the decrease in the different infrastructure and internal projects. And this can lead to uncertainty for local players. So, Nick, what do you think about that?
I think that most people don't pay attention to these larger scale events, whether they are investors or regular folk just going about their business. But it is certainly interesting to consider that countries are very similar to companies, and also very similar to individuals in that they have a credit rating. Just like you've got a credit score, so does a country, so does a company, and it's all based on the certainty that you're going to be able to pay back your loan. And so certain countries who, for example, have violent regime change all the time, they're less certain to pay back their loans. And so countries aren't willing to front them on money or goods because the certainty level is much less. And it's the same thing when you're applying for a credit card. The more certain they are that you're going to pay back, the lower your rate will be. Same thing with a mortgage. You'll get a much lower rate if you're more certain to pay. And certainty is really, I think, one of the most important words in investing. It's not said often enough, but certainty, I think, is the magic word. We want as much certainty as possible that we're going to get upside and very low downside with our investing. And effectively, that's exactly what we've just discussed, is that if you can see that a country has less certainty in delivering and their credit rating is going down, interest rates that they might have to pay will go up, and it pretty much harms the entire economy, and it might be an indication of a recession or depression.
Yes, and another interesting indicator can be the amount of money which households hold on their accounts inside the country. And by that I mean investing holding on the current deposits, and so on. This amount of money and this number can actually show us the potential inflation risks. So, as it was with the United States and probably more countries, if we go back in the history. So, when the country prints the money, it drives up inflation, and then the government should increase the rate for the commercial banks in order to drive the inflation down, and this can negative impact whole country and its citizen.
It's quite incredible when you watch the knock-on effect of doing one thing. It kind of creates this chain reaction. As Eugene just said, when a country prints a lot of money, and a good example would be the US during the pandemic, printed, I believe, over 30% of the currency. It might even be closer to 50%. They really pumped up the amount of currency in circulation by printing huge amounts and spending that amount on things like stimulus checks, PPP, pushing that money into infrastructure, other projects, and effectively increasing the amount of money in circulation by a massive amount. And the knock-on effect of that will be inflation. Inflation always comes when you increase the supply of money tremendously. And then when there's inflation, they have to counteract that by doing things like raising interest rates. And the Fed has done that quite a few times since this year began. And the effect of that is quite staggering. The knock-on chain reaction is that the mortgage rates of non-fixed mortgages go up. And if you were at a really great rate of like 3%, and then suddenly it's gone up to 4.5%, that's a huge amount different that you're going to be paying per month. If you can't afford it, boom, you are losing your house. And suddenly there are houses all across the United States going on the market. Some will be possessed by banks, and that chain reaction affects other things, and it just really has big ripple effect. So understanding that these things are in motion and how one thing affects another can make you a better investor, because suddenly you'll know the right things to invest in at the right times. For example, right now might not be a great time to invest in property. It might be good just to wait another 6 months and pick up some of those short sales. You know, you can save a lot of money if you know what's coming, and they can't really stop it if you understand what happens and why. You can make fairly accurate predictions, I feel, based on this kind of a chain reaction. Although, as Eugene said, as value investors, we tend to ignore the macro, and we tend to look just at the companies that we think are wonderful, and we wait for them to be on sale. Your thoughts?
You said really great about people who can just borrow the money from the bank and they can afford to pay out the debt. Eventually, they can lose their house or different properties. But another important indicator we can discuss is a reason why they lost their job. This indicator is the amount of time which, in average, are spent on working in the United States or different countries. This indicator shows and helps us not only understand the macro, but also understand the particular company as well. So if we see that on average, the amount of working hours in the particular country or company decreases, we can assume that the management or the government just says to people, okay, we do not need enough free work for you. So we cannot pay for you certain amount of money, which leads to unemployment and, as a result, a depression.
I agree that is an interesting indicator to look at. If you see a figure like unemployment increasing, these are very critical. One of the things that I learned when I was working in the real estate industry, in the property industry, is that certain funds, their thesis, their entire thesis, was to choose a city that had a growing population, and then to buy cheap properties that were maybe half an hour to an hour outside of the city. And they knew that because the population of the city was growing, the city itself would eventually expand and the property prices would rise dramatically. Keeping an eye on metrics like employment and growth rates of populations, these kind of things can have a profound effect on your investing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But anyway, we cannot rely on 100% on these all indicators because we just value investing guys and we look deeply into the company's numbers. And if the numbers looks really fine, we can be okay with that. Do you have any additions about the indicators or any additional thoughts for our viewers?
I think the most important takeaway from both of these episodes is that we really, as value investors, we don't really care about the macroeconomic situation. If it's an inflationary environment, if it's a depression, if it's a recession, if it's a crash, uh, generally all environments can be very, very good for us, and we don't worry about them or try and predict them. It is good to be as educated as you can in as many areas as you can, even areas that don't seem to apply to investing. At the end of the day, investing is simply understanding the world around you and and being a good business person, taking part in the world at large. The greatest quote I think I heard recently was Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have said that their job description is reading and thinking. And that's my final thought on this particular topic.
And with that, I guess we will end our episode. Thank you guys for watching, and we hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please write down them in the comments below and also subscribe for new episode. See you next time. Bye.